He says, I want to go to couples therapy. He says, let's figure this out, until it gets hard, until it gets difficult, until he has to own up to the abusive actions that he's done. And then that therapist doesn't know what they're talking about. Like, forget this. This is stupid. Like, let's just go somewhere else. And nothing actually changes. Couples therapy. It's meant to be able to help you connect with your partner. When my wife and I were going through a hard time in our life, we went to couples therapy. It was after the first time that I cheated, and it got to be the place where I confessed it, brought it to the table, and we were like, okay, let's go to couples therapy. Now, I talked about couples therapy multiple times. I'd threatened couples therapy in arguments, saying how all we had is a communication problem. If she would communicate with me, then we'd be fine. If she'd actually tell me what she actually wanted, then we'd be fine. And I'd always throw it back on her that it was her fault. It was her communication issue. I was communicating, I was talking, like all those things, and she wasn't. And so we went to couples counseling. When we went to couples counseling, we went through a period of events and period of times, and it was a counselor that was dealing with certain Christian nouthetic type counseling. It was just the aspect of where we were in life. We were going through it, and the couples counselor ended up, by the end of the day, making my wife feel like it was her fault that I cheated. Basically saying that if she'd been a better wife, then I wouldn't have cheated. Populating a lot of societal beliefs that it's actually your responsibility of why he cheated, of why he did that to you, when it's not. And the man that cheated on you is just a coward and an asshole and someone who's not willing to actually own up to what's actually going on, but instead decided to cop out of the relationship, then actually show up as a man. And so when we're dealing with this aspect of wanting to get help and wanting to work on the marriage, it's absolutely reasonable and understandable that you want that. Like, this is the person that you've done life with. This is the person that you've been through so much together. This is the person that you're in love with. It makes sense. Like, let's go, let's work on the marriage, let's figure this out, let's work on the relationship, let's get some counseling, let's get some therapy, let's actually work on this. But it's hard because he might have cheated on you. But you're still here. You still want to repair it. You still want to work through it. You see this glimmer of hope of it might be possible. And so couples therapy often seems right. It seems like a good idea. So let's talk about some pros and cons. Let's look at the differences of why do couples therapy, what's that actually look like, and how does that match up of going to couples therapy with a narcissist. So one of the pros about just couples therapy in general is this aspect of having a safe place to express feelings and work through issues. This is what it should be, right? This is an area where you can actually come to the table, you can be safe and say hey, the therapist is here for me, the counselor's here for me, I can actually express what I'm feeling, what's actually going on. Don't have to worry about getting judged or don't have to worry about getting put down because this is where I'm at. And that's the whole essence of the idea of couples counseling, of couples therapy. I just need to pick one, stick with it. But either way, you get the idea. But when that happens, when you're in that safe place and expressing those feelings, all of a sudden you sit down and you look over and the person beside you isn't the same person. The person beside you has a different mask, has a different show that they're showing to the therapist. And you're like, wait a second, this isn't a safe place because you're not actually communicating honesty and truth. The problem is that he isn't honest. He's putting up a mask, he's hiding. And you show up to the therapist's office and you're like, wait a second, what's actually going on? Because he's different at home. He's not the same in the therapist's office. He seems engaged. He seems loving. You bring up something and it's minimized and it's put down. You feel like you're the crazy one because of him not making it a big deal, of him not actually owning up to the things that are happening inside your marriage and inside your relationship. Well, another pro to the aspect of going to couples counseling is there's this aspect of when you work together, you're going to have this growth and you're going to have this change in the relationship. That's the whole point, right? You're supposed to be growing and changing and developing and working together. And so what a better way to do that than actually be in the same office with another person who's trained to be able to help couples actually do that. The hard part here is the couples that are actually in those offices that are not narcissistic couples, that are not dealing with the toxic relationship on this level, they actually want to grow, heal, change, and develop. A narcissist doesn't. That's the piece that confuses you and messes with your head. Because he says, I want to go to couples therapy. He says, let's figure this out, until it gets hard, until it gets difficult, until he has to own up to the abusive actions that he's done. And then that therapist doesn't know what they're talking about. Forget this. This is stupid. Let's just go somewhere else. and nothing actually changes. What we see so many times is even though it's supposed to be a place of growth and working on the relationship, it becomes a place of manipulation where it makes you feel crazy and confused about what's actually happening because it's minimized, it's put down, it's devalued, it's even gaslit inside the therapist's office and they don't catch it. They don't see that there's a different reality that's been putting forth by this one person. So many times therapists focus on different pieces of the relationship but not the facts of the relationship. When I've worked with couples and I've gone through like couples coaching, different aspects of it is me just saying, hey, what was true? And the person's like, well, that was her perspective. No, I'm like, what was true? You either did this or you didn't do that. Well, like that's what she thinks. Okay, did you do this? Like, did you put your hand here? Did you say this? Did you go to this place? Well, yes. Okay, then let's start being truthful and say this is what happened. If you're not going to be truthful, then there's no point of you being here. You're not even building anything on a foundation that could build a relationship. So one of the pros is you've got, in couples counseling, is you've got a trained therapist that can actually help you navigate. Now you have a person that is built on helping people emotionally connect and work through issues in marriages and relationships to get better. Some of the problems with that is not all therapists understand NPD. Not all therapists even understand what a narcissist is or what it looks like in the wild. I've had many therapists, counselors, people in clinicals come to me and work with me one-on-one because they've been with a narcissist and they normally say, I've seen this before, I've understood this before, I've gone through like the training, I've gone through the textbook, I've gone through the class, but it doesn't look this way in real life. And they get suckered into a relationship with a toxic person. The majority of the time, they're like, I should have known better. I see it. I know this stuff. But it doesn't always look the same when you're in the relationship. It doesn't always look the same when you're getting covertly devalued. And so oftentimes, you'll have a therapist that doesn't understand it and oftentimes will side with the wrong side. Because all they're seeing is the mask, and the mask looks great. The mask looks perfect, and it makes you feel crazy. And oftentimes, it opens you up for abuse. So some of those cons, so we talked about some of the pros and the problems with them, and also the cons of you walk into the therapist's office and there's not honesty. There's not a foundation of what you can actually build on. You see, a narcissist is not willing to be transparent to the therapist of what they're actually feeling, what they're doing, what's actually going on. For me, it was years and years and years of lies upon lies upon lies that I was not willing to be honest. And until I got to the place of being honest, there was no change that was even possible. There was no change that was capable based on not actually acknowledging where I was. This shows you right there that a narcissist is unwilling to change. Doesn't mean they can't. It means they're unwilling because they're unwilling to engage with honesty. You go back and you talk about things that have happened in the past and they're like, yeah, I'm going to be honest. And then they still won't own up to things that they've done. Walk away. Because they don't care about the truth. And if they don't care about the truth, there's nothing to build your relationship on. They're unwilling to change, they're unwilling to invest, and it's hard because they're going to only focus on this power dynamic of like, I need to be in charge of you. Whether that means I need to lie, cheat, steal, whatever I need to do, I need to be in charge of you. A lot of times the con is they'll turn the therapist against you. Because maybe they've already met with the therapist one-on-one, maybe they meet with them on the side, maybe you have the same therapist, and it gets to a place where the therapist starts to come back at you being you're the toxic one. Because they don't understand reactive abuse. They don't understand how a toxic person can make you and can force you and produce this reaction that looks really abusive, that looks like crazy making, that looks like you're the insane one in the relationship. And oftentimes we'll see where a therapist will get turned against you through this aspect of triangulation, like pitting one against the other, through lies, through manipulation. And you get to the place because you feel crazy because you're like, that's not the truth. This is what happened. And you look like the crazy one. Because you get frustrated, you get annoyed, you start to lash out in one sense because you're still being gaslit even in the safe environment that you're supposed to be in. One of the cons too is being stuck in the toxic relationship because of going into couples therapy. With this, you start to believe there's a hope because you see some behavioral modification, you see some potential, and you stick around longer than what you know you even should just to stay in the relationship. But before I forget and finish up today, like if you're in this place where you feel stuck, I want you to reach out for help. Like, we can help you move forward to get out of that mindset that keeps you trapped so many times. But one of the questions is, but what if they change? But what if something actually happens? What if they do get better? And the problem is, if you're not seeing honesty, vulnerability, and consistent change already, there's not going to be a change. There's not going to be this moment where they magically figure it out. They'll tell you that. Or they magically get healed. They'll try to explain that. Where they magically find God and all of a sudden everything's transformed like instantly. They'll try to convince you of that. But what you can count on is just sitting back and watching for changed behavior over a long period of time. And typically you'll see it disintegrate and fail. And not actually be the person that they said that they were going to be. So, should I go to couples therapy with a narcissist? No, I don't think you should. I'll stand on that for a long period of time, even based on my own story of multiple couples therapists that were manipulated, were shown a different way, and were also very toxic to our relationship. And some of those were Christian therapists that didn't help a thing. What you should do is you could focus on your growth, your healing, your change, your development, and the narcissist should focus on his. Like, that's what it should be. It should be separate for a good period of time. Like, separate therapy for a year. Then see about maybe possibly going to couples. But you have to see change behavior. And you also can't set a timeline. You can't tell the narcissist, hey, we're gonna do individual therapy for a year and only text on the weekends. Like, okay, that's his in, so he's always gonna get in, he's always gonna ramp it up. And we're only gonna do this for a year, and then they'll actually, some of them will do it. Some will do it for an entire year just to get back with you, then dump you, then move on. Because they want to prove something to themselves and to other people that they're not a bad person. If you want to get clear on what's actually happening, look at the demonstration of what you see. Because there should be a depth and a growth of that honesty, of vulnerability, and consistent change. If you don't see that, then like I said, you need to walk away. If you're feeling stuck, I want to provide the tools to help you escape. Go to escapetoxicity.com today to be able to see how we're trying to help people break free on a daily basis. We have people going through these programs and starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, saying, hey, I can actually grow, heal, change, and develop and get out of this. From a physical aspect, from a mental aspect, from an emotional aspect, you can actually get free. It's going to take work. It's not going to be easy. Don't expect it to be easy. But we tried to build a framework and a path to help guide you to that conclusion and to that healing. Go to escapetoxicity.com today.